My name is Mario Binelli. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Animal Sciences at the University of Florida. I took this picture this Monday at the most important day on the life of a cow-calf operation, just the day of weaning. This is our Brahman herd. We don't have many Brahmans in Florida, but almost every cow will have some Brahman influence. So we are charged with the mission of studying Brahman and how they work. That's important for our environment, in which some of the genetics will make a positive influence performance of the animals. Also in Florida, different from here, we don't finish animals. This is the last day that they stay in the herd in most of our production herds. Weaning, these girls here, they will leave. If they're girls, they will be around as recruits. If they are steered, they will come here to get fattened and then to the market. So this is the picture was taken this Monday, and for today, my learning objectives is to talk about understanding the estrous synchronization, the context of the beef-cow-calf option, principles of estrous synchronization, and then learn the purpose and the modern methods of estrous detection. So we start with this bird's eye view. We call this a repro map because instead of just a calendar of a month, you have a longer term view of all the main activities you do for reproductive management of Earth. So we start weaning. For us, again, that's the most important moment. That's when our producers will put cash in their pockets. To have weaning, that will result from a calving season. Many of our operations that are doing reproductive management have a 90-day calving season, which of course originates from a 90-day breeding season. So these calves that are being weaned here, they were calves at that portion of the year, and they were conceived in the breeding season of the previous year. So regular kind of schedule that most people do in Florida. We don't have a lot of people that synchronize animals. They just do actual breeding. So the breeding season is actually defined at the time that the bulls are put in with the cows, bulls are removed. We just do this, and we study conception along the breeding season. We start with 100% of cows that are not pregnant, and as the breeding season progresses, without any synchronization, without any help, the bull will get them pregnant in a trickle, little by little, and on that study, by the end of that 90-day breeding season, we had about 80% of our animals bred. So using that system, that bulls only, if you look at 50% pregnant, that happened at day 50 of the breeding season. So it takes more than half of their breeding season, just have half of their cows pregnant. And as you just learned from Rick, and we'll confirm now, that is not the ideal situation. I'll have to, there you go. So then, if we evolve from that to a situation in which we'll synchronize the animals and breed them at least once by AI. So people that are using synchronization beef herds in Florida, that's what they're doing. They're just breeding by AI once, and then they let them out to the bull. So if we do this, we just add a little bit of time, 9 days, 14 days, if it's a 7x7, depending on the length of the protocol, to the front of that breeding season, and we consider the first day of the day that we do AI. And then we'll put the animals that will depend on the herd. In our research and teaching herd, we wait for 15 days. And that's just to make sure, give comfortable time for the vet to detect what is an AI pregnancy to what is a natural natural service pregnancy. Most people can do it within 5 days. After AI, they can put the bulls in. That will depend on the system. So this is, what is the effect of estrous synchronization on that temporal dynamics of calving? So in this study, they use a synchronization system that was done in South America. They can use different protocols in here, but it's just here to prove the concept. And at the same study, a contemporaneous study, they had the natural service as a control group. And this is the dynamics of calving, of breeding, I'm sorry. So what happens here is that more than 50%, so 50% of the animals became pregnant on the very first day of the breeding season in the group that used a protocol for timed artificial insemination, while that took a little longer in the animals that were scheduled for natural service. So, sorry about this, guys. So it's on the first day. On the first day, we can get more than 50% of our animals bred if they were synchronized, while to get those same 50%, it took over 50 days if they're just exposed to natural service. So we will push the number of animals that get pregnant early by the use of synchronization. And this is probably one of the best uses of this technology, them to breed early. Because of this logic, if you want to have a greater proportion of calves wean heavy, you need a greater proportion of calves born early. Instead, you need a greater proportion of cows that breed early in the season. And if anything that you might learn from today's, that's for me, that is the main purpose of doing natural synchronization, get them to get pregnant early in the season, because this will result in a heavier calf when you wean them and when you sell them. So in the scale of increasing technological level to just controlling the breeding season all the way to doing LPU, calf, and neighbor transfer, we'll focus here on this, practices in which you use synchronization that will increase reproductive efficiency. If you just do time-hold breeding, this is what George will speak with us later. But if you use AI, then of course you will add the component of genetic gain. So a first take-home message is that submitting animals for a natural synchronization protocol in the beginning of the breeding season increases early breeding, early calving, and it results in a greater winning weight. As a second learning objective, I'll talk a little bit about the principles of natural synchronization. So now we're considering just these two spots here in our technological level scale. And I'm going basics, so maybe you guys all know this, but I think it's important to make the point. When you do protocols that use AI, and then the whole, we synchronize, we detect heat. And usually we'll use the AM/PM rule for breeding, and then we follow that by natural service. If we do timed AI, the idea is not to observe heat, and then fixed time, artificially inseminate all of them in a fixed moment, not having to watch for heat, and then followed by natural service. So the this picture again is in South America. This is a half-blood Angus and the Monders, and the Monds are here. If you have a large scale operation, it will become harder to watch for heat and to breed based on heat. So timed AI is mandatory for an operation on that scale. Let's see if I'll be able to play this movie. They make it happen down there because they have a lot of labor and a lot of expertise. So in that movie, let's see if it's going to play. Please observe all the players on that picture. There's a lot of people involved. That whole movie takes a minute and a half, and this guy here, this vet, will inseminate 4 cows in that time. So with my producers, one of the main things that they say not to adhere, not to adopt AI is because of the cost and because of the time it takes. But once you have a well-oiled operation with everybody knowing what they are supposed to do, the things can go very quickly and can get through a large number of animals in a day. So usually those groups of animals, there are about 200 that they do in the morning, another 200 that they'll do in the afternoon, sometimes more. I guess you got the points from that video. It can be done very quickly. So the purpose of estrous synchronization is to cram the estrous cycle of cows, each at a random stage, so they will show estrus and ovulate together in a short window. And the goal is to facilitate. So I'll go through some drugs and protocols to manipulate the bovine estrous cycle. As Rick mentioned, the Bible for this country, you can find in beefrepro.org. All of the protocols that have been tested and are put on their website are trustworthy, and you'll get a lot of information from there. So to synchronize the estrous cycle in terms of physiology now is to manage follicles and the corpus luteum using drugs strategically. So if you all went to an AI school, I'm sure you look at some repro tracks. This is a representation of an ovary and its two main structures, the corpus luteum and the follicle. And starting in the 80s, more intensively, people started to document the dynamic of growth of these structures during the estrous cycle. So using ultrasonography, people didn't have to look at an ovary after it was out of the cow, but while it was inside the cow, they could measure and notice follicles and their sizes, like small follicles in this picture, medium follicles, or large dominant follicles, and they noticed that they had a growth pattern which was not random. These follicles, they grew in waves, and after they understood that, it became much easier to control the estrous cycle and get to the stage that we are today. So this is a picture that many of you have seen before. This is a representation of what happened with follicles and the corpus during the estrous cycle of a cow. So the estrous cycle is defined at a time period between one estrus event and a subsequent estrus event. What happens inside the cow, inside the ovaries, is what we are trying to manage. So what we see is that throughout the estrous cycle, the follicles which are represented by these figures here, they will grow in waves. Usually 2 to 3 waves of follicle growth in a given estrous cycle. So this is a way of follicle growth. A number of follicles emerge, that's called the emergence of the follicular wave. They will grow, and at some point there will be a deviation, so there will be one follicle in a given wave that will continue to grow, while the other follicles that started growing together will regress. That one follicle becomes the dominant follicle. It is the only follicle growing inside the ovary at a given time. So there will be, on this example here, there's 1, 2, 3 waves of follicle growth. That dominant follicle will have 2 fates. If it is in the middle of the estrous cycle, that follicle will regress. And after the regression of that follicle, you can see here in red, it becomes inactive. A new follicular wave will emerge. If it is the last wave of the cycle, that can be the second or the third, usually. On this example, is the 1, 2, this is the third wave. That dominant follicle will become the ovulatory follicle. That cow will come in heat, and that follicle will ovulate and release the oocyte for fertilization. Why these follicles here do not ovulate? Because they're under a high progesterone environment. So what you can see here in this orange line can represent the life of the corpus luteum. Remember that second structure, the follicle and the corpus luteum? So after ovulation, what used to be the dominant follicle of the previous estrous cycle, it became the corpus luteum. And now it secretes progesterone, as you can see here on this orange line. By the end of the estrous cycle, their corpus luteum regresses. And then the concentration of progesterone also regresses. At that moment, if there is a dominant follicle, that dominant follicle will be able to continue its growth and ovulate. So 3 waves on this estrous cycle of this example. 2 of them were non-ovulatory. The last one is the ovulatory wave. That's it. This is how estrous cycle, this is what happens inside the ovary. To make ears and many people else to determine. And the synchronization protocol, guys, it attempts to mimic the events of the ovulatory follicular wave. So when we're trying to synchronize, we're trying to induce estrus and ovulation, as I mentioned before, at a moment that's in a short window of time. So this is the last follicular wave on this example, here in blue. And this is what the estrus synchronization protocols are attempting to do. First, program follicle recruitment. So if animals are at different stages of the estrous cycle, there'll be different animals undergoing follicle recruitment at different moments. We want them to recruit a new follicular wave at the same time. Second, the protocol needs to induce corpus luteum regression. As long as we have progesterone and we have an active corpus luteum, there's no ovulation. The end result of this synchronization of the estrous cycle is to have ovulation. So we need to remove that corpus luteum, remove progesterone, just like as it happens in the last wave of the estrous cycle. And then the final thing, especially for the protocols of timed artificial insemination, we want to induce ovulation. So we don't want those follicles to ovulate at a wider window, but at a narrower window, and by that we induce them to ovulate at the same time. So that's it. This is this simple. Like we know the protocol. There are many of them differently, but all attempt to at some point do these 3 things: recruit a new follicle wave, induce CL regression, and in the protocols of time artificial insemination, we want to induce ovulation. So here's our toolbox, and it is restricted compared to other parts of the world where more hormones and more alternatives are available. Here we have, and please, I don't work for any company. These are the products I had in my hand, so I took a picture. So we have sources of prostaglandin F2 alpha, sources of GnRH, a single source of progesterone, which is a sitter, except for MGA if you're feeding, but that's only allowed for heifers. And then an estrus detection aid, such as Estrotect, for example. We have increased our portfolio now with estrus detection systems, such as accelerometers. Although they have been used for dairy cattle for a long time, they are now starting to be used for beef animals as well, as mostly in research at this point, but as a tool for estrus detection. Very good. So let's start with one example for a protocol that's not timed, it's just doing AI based on estrus observation. So again, those 3 phases, right? First, program follicle recruitment. So what we want to do here, we want to remove a dominant follicle, because if it is dominant, nothing else grows in that ovary. So usually we do it with a shot of GnRH, a GnRH source. GnRH, if there is a follicle that's responsive to GnRH, 65% of the cases there will be, that follicle will regress, it will ovulate, and then it ceases to be dominant. And then a new wave of follicle will emerge. So this is what we do. Usually we give an injection of GnRH. At the same point, we'll add a progesterone source. So, for example, we'll add a sitter. So we'll remove the dominant follicle, giving GnRH. We'll add a progesterone source, so we'll mimic what's happening at the last wave of the cycle. There is progesterone available. If there is a CL there, that's good, but then we want to ensure that there is progesterone there by adding a sitter device. So that sitter will keep a negative feedback of progesterone from the corpus luteum, will mimic that, and will inhibit any precocious ovulation that might occur if it's not there. Second, we have to induce CL regression. So what we do, we remove the sitter. There's no more progesterone releasing device from here. And we inject the cows with prostaglandin. So prostaglandin will kill ACL that's present, if it is present, and removing the cider will remove that exogenous source of progesterone. So we remove the endogenous and the exogenous, no more progesterone. That will allow the final growth of that follicle to a point of ovulation. Very good. So with that, allowing that follicle to grow, we will become an ovulatory follicle or a pre-ovulatory follicle, very large. We'll release a lot of estradiol. We'll make those cows come in heat. Represented that here by all those activated estrogens, for example. And at this point, if we are doing AI based on estrus, we'll stop right here, observe estrus by whatever means that you are used to, and inseminate the cows using the AMPM rule. Here are some of the protocols that are listed on the 2025 protocol sheet, and you can choose the one of your preference. I'm not here to advocate to anyone. How about if you want to time AI that? Then we have to do the third portion of our sequence, which is to induce timed ovulation. And the tool that we have available for us, again, is GnRH. And then at this point, we'll inject GnRH with the intent to ovulate that follicle in a narrow window and inseminate the animals at a timed moment, at a specific moment on the management scheme. The exact times and time windows are recommended on each of the protocols. So these are some protocols that you can do heat detection and time AI, and then you will inject GnRH at the moment of time AI if the animals don't show heat. But there are also protocols that are just for time AI. So you don't observe heat, you follow the number of hours after the removal of the cider and inject prostaglandin and inseminate all of our animals in a time scale without regarding for estrus. So compared to ranch bulls, the AI sires will improve her genetics and will increase performance rate in the operation. That's why we do AI. That's not why you synchronize, that's why you do AI. Desynchronization and AI require a series of coordinated skills to be successful. So if you're not doing it, seek guidance. Look for someone that's doing it. Talk to your station agent. Taking incremental steps in complexity and scale, that will be a big tool, a big key for your success if you're trying to implement AI for the first time. For my clients and for eyes first. Then you learn to incent. Do that. Don't go straight for AI. Try to learn to synchronize an animal first and see what are the challenges there. Finally, I just spent a little bit of time to learn the purpose and the modern methods of estrus detection. So we are going on that portion there, where we're trying to detect estrus. And of course, the traditional way to do it is by visual observation. Go to the field, watch for the animals that are standing to be mounted. Those are the ones in heat. If that's happening in the morning, you will inseminate in the afternoon. That's not new. That's the way we've always done. What's been available for us in the last decade or so is to use an estrus detection device, such an estrotech, so that you don't have to presently witness the mount, but you can look at the estrotech and have it scored, and then if the estrotech has been activated, you know that you can apply the AM/PM rule. If you observe this in the morning, you'll inseminate in the afternoon. So it's been a great tool. We use that for research every day in our herds in the University of Florida. But what's coming up now, what's newest, is the use of accelerometers. So again, I told you that's been used for many decades in dairy. We're starting to use this more and more now in beef cattle. In this example, this is an experiment we ran at the university, and I'll show some details for you just in a second. We used collars. They are not the choice device anymore. I think they have a year tag now that they're using. That collar there has an accelerometer, and he also has a microphone. So you're able to monitor both activity of the animal, how much the animal is moving back and forth, but also the rumination pattern of the animal using the microphone. That's stored in a chip here on the cow, and it's translated to, it's picked up by an antenna and taken to a computer, and then on your cell phone you can see which animals are doing what in terms of activity. This is the kind of graph that product will offer you. So it will show you a change in activity, and an increase in activity, and a decrease in rumination. And when you line up two, the algorithm sends you a signal that that cow is an estrous, and then you can program your breeding activity accordingly. It also gives other variables such as peak activity, the duration of estrus, the rumination nadir, calculate the heat index. So it'll give you more variables for you to perhaps evaluate the quality of that estrus, how intense it was, how long did it take. So we have published a paper this year, and Dr. Cecilia Rocha, she's sitting right there. She was the main author of that paper, in which we evaluated the efficiency of using that system in beef animals. And we did that through a very complicated study. It took us 2 years. I'm going to go through quickly with them, and just going to show a small portion of those of the results from that study. So that study took us 2 years. We did 8 rounds of embryo transfer. Every round took 90 days. We used the same 50 cows on those 8 different rounds. Each round had a synchronization period. We used select sync plus sitter. We observed heat. 7 days after heat, exactly 7 days after, we performed the embryo transfer. 46 days after heat, we terminated the pregnancies on each of the rounds. So we do have a pregnancy result of each of these cows on each of these 8 different rounds. After pregnancy termination, they had a recovery period of 35 days, and then during that time we were pre-synchronizing them again, and then those same animals start back on the subsequent cycle to be synchronized. Is that clear? Is that clear? So 8 rounds, exactly the same 50 animals, they got the chance to become pregnant too, embryo transfer. They only received the embryos if they showed estrus. If they did not show estrus, they were absent from the study. And we checked estrus on this study by those 3 methods that I described to you: visual observation, estrus track, and using the accelerometer tool. So we had 400 estrus synchronization. We pre-synchronize them and synchronize them. The visual estrus track and the accelerometer. We detect estrus, and it's the first data point for you. Using all of that technology, we were able to observe estrus in 72% of the opportunities we gave cows. That's the best we could do. They all confirmed on day 4, so they were true estruses. And then the ones that did not show estrus, that we did not detect estrus, they also did not ovulate. So there were no silent estrus or anything like this. In the embryo transfer was precisely 7 days after estrus. This is the system we had. The cows were on this 3-acre plot for the whole time. They had access to a single source of water and a single source of feed. And that was on purpose because there was a line with our antenna, which was in this building here, which was the first building with electricity closest to us. But because they had to come here for water and for feeding, the signal that was stored in their collar were able to be transmitted to the antenna and to the computer, which was sitting right in that building, and then to the cell phone of Dr. Rocha. So this is the data. This is estrus expression. So first thing, what we have here is each of the rounds 1 to 8, and the overall estrus expression. Remember, they're always the same 50 cows, the same protocol, the same people, the same environment, the same feed, the same everything. The only thing that was not the same was the weather, because depending on what round, it was a little bit colder or it was a little bit warmer. But as you can see, on the beginning, we had 46% of cows showing heat. At some point, we had 90% of cows showing heat. So these same animals, across time, they will have a differential heat response to the same protocol. Just start thinking about those things. Because each round took 90 days, we separate the seasons between warmer or cooler seasons for the standards. But then we look at estrous expression and try to divide them between the seasons, cool season and the warm seasons. There was no effect. So you could be thinking, hey, yeah, maybe the warmer seasons they showed less heat. That was not the case. It was exactly the same. And then because we had 2 years of study, yes, so the second year they showed more estrus than the first. And just why did that happen? These cows came from a very large range in Florida, called the Deseret range, 45,000 mama cows. They are managed very extensively. They go to the chutes twice a year, one for braining calves and one for weaning, and that's it. And we're putting them here in a system that they are managed twice a day. So it's likely, but we didn't have proof of that, that maybe stress had some effect on this lower estrus expression in the beginning. As they get used to us, they show estrus in a more normal way. So yes, that's the mere effect. Now, because we had those 50 cows, and there were 8 chances, 8 to analyze cow by cow. So please try to see if you can understand this graph, because it's kind of tough. So we have those 50 cows. What I have here is the number of cows that show the heat. And this is the number, this is the number of rounds that the cow showed estrus. So if the cow, out of the 8 rounds, if she only showed heat in 2 of the rounds, she's right here. That was 1 cow that was like that. If a cow showed heat in 6 out of the 8 rounds, those were 24% of them, so 12 of those cows, they'll be here. So what you can see is that the majority of the cows, so 24 plus 20, that's 44, plus 18, that's 6. So 62% of our cows, about 2/3, they showed heat in at least 6 out of the 8 rounds. But there will be some cows that showed heat in maybe half or less of the opportunities that they were given. So there is an intrinsic ability of individual animals to show heat to your protocol. Remember, everything is the same on this 8th round. They just don't like to be synchronized by this protocol. That's the best we have. Pre-sync plus the close-sync consider, there's nothing wrong. They just don't respond to it. Why? What are the characteristics of these cows? We don't know. We are looking at some of the variables that we collected, and we'll have that summarized in a paper for you probably later this year. So at this point, just keep this as preliminary information that the cows will behave in a bell shape in their ability to show estrus to a synchronization protocol. Just for the kicks, I want to show you the pregnancy results. This is not the objective for me today, but at the end, we had a 60% pregnancy to embryo transfer after 46 days. That's when all the pregnancies are terminated. Look, regardless of the round, remember there was a big effect of round for estrus expressed with the protocol, but because we only transferred the embryos to animals that showed heat, as long as animals show heat, they get pregnant fine. There was no effect of round on their pregnancy over time. About 60% regardless of the round. Also, regardless of the season, and also regardless of the year. So their ability to become pregnant, as long as they show heat, is exactly the same. So my take-home messages, you've seen most of them. The last one is detect estrus to maximize pregnancy by AI. New technology will decrease labor and increase accuracy of estrus detection. Going further, of course, I don't have time to talk about all of these, but there are protocols for estrus synchronization for heifers versus cows. That's different. Dairy cattle, Bos indicus and Bos indicus influenced cattle. Protocols for using Sept semen. Protocols for fertility. Protocols for therapeutic purposes, and also protocols for resync I was visiting a ranch in South America last year when I was visiting Brazil for a sabbatical, and they had a 20,000 cow-calf operation with no bulls. They just resync two, so they inseminate 3 times, 1 time, sync, 2 resyncs, bull, and they have a 90+% pregnancy rate. It's also possible. So that's my picture here. This is a picture of our Brahma herd, our heifers that were just weaned this Monday. And I want to thank a lot of support that we had from the public and private sector for conducting this study. Year and a half. And then we have many collaborators from many universities playing very strong functions we do in terms of research and extension. With that, thank you, and I'm open for questions.